Most people think that being an introvert holds you back in business. What if I told you that the very traits that most people think hold you back, being quiet, reserved, even a little awkward, could actually be your biggest secret weapons? For years, I believed that these made me less of an entrepreneur until I discovered that they were the exact reasons I was succeeding. So if you've ever felt like you didn't fit the mold, stick with me. I'm going to flip this belief on its head and prove why introverted entrepreneurs often have the edge over everyone else. And at the end, I'm going to share some powerful takeaways that you can use to turn your introversion into your ultimate superpower. When I first started out as an entrepreneur, I believed that success in small business belonged to the most outgoing person in the room. That's what I saw everywhere that I went. The person who could dominate the conversations, they networked effortlessly, they could pitch their products and services without even breaking a sweat. So that definitely wasn't me. Growing up, I was the awkward, geeky kid that just didn't fit in anywhere. I wasn't real popular, I wasn't hated either, but I just never had that group that embraced me. And unfortunately, a lot of that mindset followed me into small business. So when I first started to build, I completely just felt out of place. I will never forget standing at the doorway about to walk into one of my first business networking events. The room was full of all these professionals, seemed like 100 people, and they just had it all together. They were speaking clearly, they were all well dressed, they're exchanging business cards. And here's me, I'm wearing this $20 baggy suit that I bought off of eBay because I was broke and clearly just trying to fake it. And I just felt like I didn't belong there. So while it was wildly uncomfortable, I knew I had to make this business work in order to put food on the table for my family. I'm just trying to keep a roof over our heads. So I did it anyway. I faced my fears, I stepped through that doorway and into that room. And what I quickly learned was that introversion that made me so awkward when I was younger didn't disqualify me in this setting. It actually set me apart. It turns out that myth that I believed, that myth that entrepreneurs, you just have to be this extroverted sales machine, was far from the truth. In reality, introverted entrepreneurs bring a set of strengths that most people completely overlook. And those strengths of focus, creativity, empathy, and preparation can build businesses that not only succeed, but can stand the test of time. So let's take a few minutes to unpack these strengths so you clearly understand how to maximize your potential that is hiding just below the surface. But before we do that, if this video is already speaking to you, please take a moment to subscribe. Each week I put out content just like this that will help even the most introverted person build the business of their dreams. So let's jump into this. Strength number one is focus. Introverts thrive in deep work. Unlike our extroverted counterparts, we don't need to be surrounded by just constant noise to get energy. We can sit alone, focused for just hours. Just this last week, my wife and I hopped into the car to run some errands, and she immediately noticed the radio wasn't on. For her, that lack of background noise almost immediately made her insane. For me, that quiet meant that I could simply sit in peace with my thoughts. And driving is often where I get a ton of deep thinking and planning done. So that level of concentration is a competitive edge that most entrepreneurs will never fully develop. But for you, that comes naturally. All right, strength number two is your creativity. Introverts, we process ideas deeply. While others will chase some quick wins or brainstorm on the fly, we often let ideas simmer for a little bit. And that's when breakthroughs really start to happen. I remember as a kid, I would lock myself in my room for several hours creating these elaborate Lego creations. I was creating these whole worlds of make-believe while my friends would simply follow the directions in the manual and then quickly lose interest. Instead, I would repeatedly build and then dismantle everything to better understand how the blocks really fit together. Unfortunately, that creativity, that followed me into entrepreneurship, allowing me to research topics to depths that most people will just never understand. So if you're an introvert, you likely have a bit of that creativity inside you as well. Embrace that, go deep, and build your knowledge of the world around you. Strength number three is empathy. As introverts, we naturally listen far more than we talk. And that's not a weakness, that's the ability to influence others. Because when you listen, you understand people. And when you understand people, you can lead, you can sell, you can serve at a much, much higher level. So you remember that networking event where I was standing at that door just frozen in fear? I would love to tell you that I had it all figured out right away. I definitely did not. I made plenty of mistakes along the way. Luckily, I had some amazing mentors while I was on my journey. And shortly after I began, one of those mentors came up to me and gave me the most valuable piece of advice that I have ever received, still to this day. He said the key to building meaningful relationships is to be interested, not interesting. Here, I've been trying to wow everyone in the room, and I simply needed to use the skill that came naturally, listening. Most people don't remember the entrepreneur who talks the most. They remember the one who made them feel heard. So if you're struggling to figure out what to say online or during a networking event, lead with curiosity and empathy. That's what will make you stand out from the sea of other people in your field. Strength number 4 is preparation. Introverts, we usually are not the ones who just leap without looking. We prepare, we analyze, and while that sometimes makes us a little slower to act, it often saves us from some catastrophic mistakes. In my past, I haven't always listened to that little voice sitting on my shoulder trying to warn me to slow down or do a little bit more research. One of my first business ventures, there were plenty of red flags, but instead of taking my time and preparing and making sure it was a calculated risk, I just jumped. And a few years later, I ended up bankrupt and a home in foreclosure and facing a long, painful journey of emotional recovery. So as an introvert, it's important to embrace your strength of preparation. Risks are always going to be part of small business, but make sure they are calculated risks. That preparation, it's not hesitation, it's insurance. And in business, that's often the difference between success and failure. So those are the big 4 strengths that introverted entrepreneurs often bring to the table. And if there's any that you think that I might have missed, I'd love to hear about them. Drop them in the comments down below. So if you felt broken because you just didn't fit that extroverted mold, I completely get it. I've been there as well. I used to believe that same exact thing. But here's the truth. The world doesn't need a loud entrepreneur. There's plenty of those out there. It needs thoughtful, empathetic, focused leaders who can build businesses with depth and resilience. Something that looked like a weakness at first, like introversion, ADHD, sensitivity, can become your largest strength if you put the right habits in place. So here's a few actionable steps that can help you do exactly that. So if you're an introverted entrepreneur, step 1 is to create a space for deep work every single day. If you have tons of noise and distractions around you, you're never going to hit your full potential. So make sure you're creating that nice quiet space for you to really excel. And step number 2 is in your relationship development, focus on listening more than talking. Remember, be interested, not interesting. Step number 3 is build systems that reduce decision fatigue and free up your creative energy. Each day we've got limited amount of mental energy, and you've got to redirect your focus and lean into that creative side of your energy. Step 4, and speaking of that energy, you need to protect it. Unlike extroverts, you aren't fueled by people. So recovery isn't a luxury, it's part of your advantage and something you must take seriously. So to wrap this up, being an introvert, it is not a weakness. If used correctly, it's a superpower and the greatest advantage you actually have in business. Your quiet persistence, your depth, your empathy, that's what makes you dangerous as a small business owner. So stop trying to fit that mold. You're not supposed to. You're supposed to break it. And if this message resonated with you today, subscribe and check out this next video right here to keep learning about real strategies that are going to help underdog entrepreneurs just like you survive and win